Hello, and welcome back to the channel. As you can see here, we're at the end of the 2021-2022 season. This is the kind of 21-22 season recap of this Seattle Kraken, Jamie Oleksiak away Jersey Quest franchise mode. As you kind of see, we're in the beginnings of the free agency period, and it's like I'm champions for the Minnesota Wild, so we obviously didn't win the cup. And you probably could tell by like the team leader points thing, like our regular season was kind of as expected, but we'll kind of quickly recap that regular season and the draft and free agency stuff and whatnot, and then expectations for next season before wrapping up. So let's kind of get into it. So here, looking at the the screen here, kind of a good way to start because it has like our record and stuff on it. So in terms of the regular season, as we finished with a 34, 39, and 9 record, which was good, not really good, for 77 points and 7th in the Pacific Division. So it's better record than Kraken had IRL. They measured just 27 wins their first season, but still not like a good enough record to make the playoffs, which I think we were kind of like on the fringes, like at the trade deadline. I think we were like in the second wild card spot, and then like how it was frustratingly set up was there was like I think we had a game against the Red Wings, and then like the next day is the trade deadline, and like Vince Dunn got like injured during that game, and I don't think I saw it until after the trade. Even if like either way, like I wasn't gonna trade for someone to replace him or anything like that. But like Vince Dunn got hurt like for like most of the rest of the regular season, like in the game before the trade deadline, and then like from that point on, we kind of just like were terrible. So like we were kind of like in the fringes of the playoff spot, but then that kind of Vince Dunn injury kind of led us to being really bad for the last like month of the season, and we kind of fell all the way down to 7th in the Pacific. Is the playoffs. There was the kind of stats behind that. Goals for per game was 2.76, which is 23rd in the league. And then goals against per game is 2.98, which is 21st. So having more goals against per game than goals for per game, not a recipe for success, as you can clearly see here. In terms of leading scorers, it was Alexander Wennberg here. Just go into, I guess, so you can see some more scorers as well. But yeah, he was our leading scorer with 13 goals, 46 assists, 59 points, which isn't really that great, considering the leading scorer in the league was like almost double that. Yeah, literally almost double that. Leon Draisaitl with Edmonton had 115 points. He was the leading scorer, so he basically had like 3 away from doubling Wennberg's total there. So yeah, which is like kind of the problem with this roster, which we'll kind of get into when we talk about free agency business and stuff. But yeah, so Wennberg was leading scorer in terms of how Jamie Oleksiak did. As you kind of noticed in the, like when I did the intro, he kind of fit perfectly on the third pair, so he was like on the third pairing, which 15 points, 4 goals, 11 assists, and a +1, so we were like a under 500 team. Not bad for a third pairing role for him. So pretty decent season for Jamie Oleksiak, our player of focus. But yeah, so we missed the playoffs obviously, and so the Stanley Cup went to Minnesota Wild. The President's Trophy was Pittsburgh Penguins, finished with 119 points in the Metro Division, where every team finished above NHL 500. It's 8th in the Metro was Philly with 84 points. And then who did Minnesota beat in the Stanley Cup final? Is the New Jersey Devils, who were wild card 1 with 98 points, which would have been good for second place in every other division besides the Metro. So that's kind of how stacked they were there. So yeah, Devils fell to the Wild in the Cup final. The Zach Parise Bowl, if you will. So those are the kind of teams he spent the most time with. But yeah, so regular season playoffs not great, obviously, because we weren't in the playoffs at all. So in terms of the draft, we had a bunch of picks, and the biggest one of note, obviously, is our first round picks. We had a lottery pick, which was 8th overall. We got bumped back a pick, I think it was like Ottawa or something, like jumped up like the next spots to first overall. So we got bumped down a spot, but it didn't even really matter because I kind of picked like. I'd rather if I could trade it backwards, but I want to make sure that like the player that I wanted was still there, even though I think he was like 11th or whatever, like in the Central Scouting rankings, was Brad Lambert, because he has a bajillion X factors and stuff, so that's really solid, and he's like the game consider him a gem, which I think he's like more. I think how that I'm not really sure how that works. I know it's a good thing obviously because it's like a green thing. It's like an equivalent bad version called like a bust, where you get like a red gem next to the name when they're in like the draft and stuff. I'm pretty sure it means either like he's more like I think it means he's more likely to hit his potential than like a standard player or it's like he's going to hit a higher overall. I don't know. It's something good, obviously. Like someone who knows more might be able to say in the comments or something, but yeah. So he finished. He said he was a first overall pick, so he's going to be probably pretty solid for us in a year or two. And he's ready to hit the NHL roster, so that's pretty hype. The rest of our picks were all pretty solid. We kind of got a bunch of like mix of forwards and defense and a goalie. Kind of to hopefully start filling out our AHL roster in a couple years. So it's like basically pretty thin considering we were like a brand new franchise and all that stuff. But I guess another thing I forgot to talk about the regular season stuff is the awards and whatnot, which obviously since we were kind of bad, no one on our team won. Sorry for yawning, but yeah. So Leon Draisaitl with 115 points got most of the awards. He had the Art Ross, the Hart, the Norris for the John Carlson, the Capitals. Lady Bing went to Evgeny Kuznetsov, finished with 97 points. Calder went to Dawson Mercer, the Devils. Conn Smythe went to Kirill Kaprizov. The Vezina went to Darcy Kemper of the Avalanche. The Jennings then went to Kemper and Kevin Lankinen of the Avalanche. The Masterton went to Danny DeKeyser of Detroit. The Jack Adams went to Buffalo's coach. As they finished, they ended their playoff drought here. A 92-point regular season, finishing third in the Atlantic. Selke went to Kopitar. Oh, Jesus. Almost dropped my controller. Sorry about that. Selke went to Kopitar, unsurprising. The Lindsay went to Draisaitl, unsurprising as well. And then the Rocket Richard went to Alex Ovechkin. Not really surprised there. Who finished with 108 points, which was good for third in the league. So yeah, pretty solid stuff there, I guess. I don't know. No Kraken on it, so not really a huge deal for me. So then in terms of the off-season moves and whatnot, yeah, kind of the problem with this Kraken roster, which like is kind of glaringly apparent, at least in terms of, I think it was both like kind of still is the problem in real life and kind of in the game, is that it's like basically it's like because it's an expansion draft and they didn't kind of get the same. They had the same rules as Vegas, obviously, but the teams are like kind of wizened up from those new rules and stuff. Weren't like panicking and sending them like Shea Theodores for them to not take like Josh Mansons and stuff like what's happening with the Vegas draft. Like, it's basically a team of like all basically kind of middle six, bottom six forwards and like middle pairing kind of defensemen. So like we have a lot of like decent players, but none who are like, you know, like gonna really form like a solid first line and top pairing and stuff. So that's why kind of our league score at 59 points. We don't really have like any elite talents or anything like that. And because they're all kind of players other teams are willing to expose in the expansion draft and stuff, like they're mostly like kind of all tied down to medium to longer term contracts and stuff. So like the only players I dropped were like Victor Rask and like whoever who were like, I don't know, like was like our basic bottom like fourth line left winger and like our 13th forward or whatever. So the only kind of open spot in the roster was like fourth line left wing, which I signed Zach Stanford to a 1-year deal because said he was like a perfect, seemingly is a good fit for this fourth line role. We'll find out, I guess, next season when I actually get around to actually get around to like setting up the lines and stuff next season. Yeah, but the problem is this roster basically filled with like like good but not great players, and so it's kind of hard for me to like set up good lines and stuff. So this might take a while for us to win the Stanley Cup and stuff, because we're gonna have to like slowly like kind of build like actual lines and stuff. Where like we have like our first line like this season was Brandon Tanev, who's like a 81 overall. Alexander Wentberg here, who's like an 83, who's like supposed to take a middle six like center. And then Jonas Donskoy, who's like an 80 overall. Just kind of basically based on like scheme fit and stuff. That's how I was doing it a lot of the time, like trying to form these lines and stuff. So it's not like we really have like, you know, like a 86 or like an 85 or something to slap on the first line to kind of start building from there. And because these guys are all tied down to longer term kind of contracts, it's hard for me to. I would have tried if there was anyone like really good in free agency available, but there really wasn't any first line like level forwards available, at least according to the game. So I was like, I'll kind of stick with what we have for now. The only kind of area I was thinking of potentially like upgrading was goalie, because Darcy Kemper, the Vezina winner, was available in free agency. But I was basically going to have to either trade one of Grubauer or Drieger, and Grubauer, even though he's kind of schmeh, has X Factor, so I was like he'd be a decent backup. So I was going to try Drieger, but no one wanted him. So kind of couldn't really try to upgrade goaltending there. But so kind of with all that in mind, basically saying next season we're probably going to miss the playoffs as well. I'd imagine just because like basically didn't like upgrade anywhere. We kind of make lateral move, like a singular like kind of lateral move in free agency and whatnot. So I imagine we're kind of going to be meh again next season and miss the playoffs again. So it's kind of going to be slowly trying to like build up, like kind of through the draft potentially and free agency, like kind of trying to build like from the top down, instead of like kind of like traditionally how these things end up going is we usually have like a kind of decent first line and stuff. We had to build the depth. Instead, we have like the depth pretty much here already. We just need that kind of like elite level first line, first pairing kind of stuff to kind of convert it from like a Schmet team to a good team. So it's going to take us a couple of years probably of like drafting, like kind of hopefully Brad Lambert can turn into like that kind of like first line center we need, or him or Manny Beniers can turn to that first line center we need, and like maybe Vince Dunn can kind of jump up in overall and stuff, or kind of like rely on kind of draft and free agency and player development to kind of get there. So next season kind of not going to be a good one either, but it's going to basically also be a really quick one because we didn't make the playoffs and stuff. We didn't make like create like a new rivalry for the Kraken here, so I literally like next season have to simulate every single regular season game, which I basically did this season too. I don't think I ever had to step in and play because their record was so bad IRL. I was able to kind of stay at or where they like better than where they were the entire season. So I didn't have to like haven't actually played a singular game as the Kraken yet in this franchise mode, and probably won't have to for at least another season or two because we're gonna probably keep missing the playoffs. So this is probably gonna be a pretty quick one for me to kind of get through, record all the videos and stuff, which is nice because I'm kind of getting up to the point where I can tell. Even though this is probably gonna be pre-recorded, like I'm kind of getting to the point now that like what stuff's gonna kind of come out day or day after I finish actually record it, because I'm like caught up and whatnot because of like just because of me kind of like waiting for things like the FIFA 22 to do the Pape Sarr one, kit quest that finished recently and stuff. But yeah, so we should get through the series kind of pretty quickly. And we do have a decent kind of timeline, because I'm pretty sure it was at the first season of a 5-year deal that Jamie Oleksiak was signed to, so we have at least 4 more seasons probably to try and kind of improve the roster enough to the point where we can win a Stanley Cup before we kind of have to worry about the series ending. But yeah, so next season probably gonna miss the playoffs and stuff again. But yeah, thank you for anyone who watched this kind of episode. Hopefully you check out next episode as well. Thank you.